All right, everyone. So, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and you are watching us right here on the Conscious Awakening Network. Now, if you're viewing us on our website, welcome, and I invite you to take your time, check out the site, especially all the cool events that we have coming up. And speaking of events, I do want to remind you that this weekend, May 9th through the 11th is the New Living Expo. And on Sunday, the 11th at 11, I am going to be speaking. I'm going to be talking about the multidimensional grids. I'm going to be channeling Elder Mother Tiamu, who is an Andromedan aspect. And we are going to work to align the grids in your field. So check us out. Also, I'm going to be speaking at the Light Language Conference, as are many of the people that you love. So check that out. It is now going to be online instead of in person. So check it out. Go to consciousawakeningnetwork.org, go to the event drop down menu, and you'll find it right there. Now, I'm also excited to introduce our speaker tonight. He's a newcomer to Conscious Awakening, and he is Justin Shaw. Now, Justin has just published his first book called Sorcery One-on-One 13 Rungs to Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Now, if you get the book, you might notice that the misspelling of sorcery, and it's purposeful because it is becoming a sorcerer, Sourcerer. And it's not about casting spells, it's about using source energy to heal trauma and manifest a thriving new life. Now, his backstory weaves together a lot of different humor and pop culture metaphors and the insight to create a unique system of healing that was inspired by the 12 steps of AA, Alcoholic Anonymous. And that 13 rung of sorcery do not discriminate between the symptoms of soul sickness. And the sorcerer recognizes that the overuse of our phones and our hyper focus on the material world can be just as destructive to the soul as much as drugs and alcohol can. So each specific symptom, such as the addictions to gambling, food, shopping, sex, drugs, etc., as well as most forms of what is referred to as chronic illnesses, all branches out from the same root cause, which he calls spiritual bankruptcy. So I am super excited to bring up Justin and welcome you to Cosmic Conversations. Hey, Justin.
Hey, well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being here, wherever here is. That's the beautiful thing about technology now. Here is wherever you are, and it's wherever I am, and we're all here, and whatever that means.
Exactly. So I want to just go ahead and get started. Tell us about your book, what inspired you, and actually what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so that's a story, right? I could, just a brief overview of things because it's important to kind of know my background and everything. And growing up, I had there's two types of trauma that people go through. There's the capital T trauma, which is, kind of knee-jerking events of, physical abuse or sexual abuse and things like that. And then there's just lower T trauma. That's this kind of slow burn trauma, maybe just, a child is told disparaging things, or in my case, just not told anything at all, ever. And that's kind of what I went through. I like to, there's a lot of pop culture and humor in my book, and I like to say, it was growing up in my household, it was like Fight Club. The first rule was you do not talk about your feelings. And the second rule was you do not talk about your feelings. It's like that's exactly how it was. That's my favorite movie. So that's a really tough environment it's an emotional vacuum is really hard to grow up in. And my mother did not use the word love. It was mostly just her and I. My parents divorced when I was, kind of in middle school, and my dad was gone a lot when I was younger. And he was there more when I was really young, but even if he had been there, he's the same. These are people that just didn't grow up with the word love, don't know, how to express affection in a healthy way. And so that's how they were programmed, brought up, and that's how, they passed that on. So, things just weren't talked about. Anything vulnerable, talking about, anything that's sex, drugs, staying away from predators, like what do you want to do with I mean, anything. Just nothing was talked about. So I grew up in front of a television. If you've ever seen The Cable Guy, he has that little child that has the mom goes out. My mother never went out. She had crippling anxiety and depression. We were just in our separate rooms together. So she was in her room, I was in my room, and there were no brothers and sisters. So I just grew up in, the TV was not a babysitter, it was a full-time parent. So that's just that led to a lot of hard times in my 20s. My 20s were filled with, rehab and halfway houses and, times in park. I spent several nights in park benches when I get kicked out of halfway houses and had nowhere to go. And that's a really low moment when, you're spending the night in a park and cold and that's, that's pretty much rock bottom. So, I got things together in my 30s and kind of went rehab finally took and I went to rehab and I kind of went the route of, what they preach in there is kind of, the traditional route of, go AA and, Christianity and these things that are, it was a faith-based center. So I kind of went that route. And what really brought me, and that worked for a time, it, it got me sober, but I got sober and then was asking questions. Well, now what? Now I'm sober and I'm miserable. Like I don't like at least the drugs and the alcohol like took away the misery a little bit, and so I was just sober and not having any fun. It just wasn't what I thought it was. So once something happened and my mother got terminally ill and got very sick, so once a major event happened, sobriety's gone. So, that whole thing was, that was the starting process that was the kind of the caterpillar going into the cocoon. And watching her and going through that, with her, that kind of slow burn trauma that I saw over a year, the cancer, dementia and cancer, and watching her go through that. And what made it 10 times worse was this programming from Christianity that had told me if my mother is not a practicing Christian, she's going to hell. So instead of being the shepherd in the afterlife that I would be now, where it's just like, oh my God, mom, it's like taking off a tight shoe. Your pain is gonna be gone. It's gonna be so wonderful. And that wasn't me. I was in, tight, like like what's gonna happen. And I was probably not even healthy for her to be around, honestly. So that slow process, and I lost my sister shortly after that. I lost a childhood friend shortly after that. I got mauled in the face by a Alaskan Malamute dog in a drug dealer's house. I still have the scars right across here to prove it. And then I had a fiance who has her own spiritual issues, and she just decided to up and leave, and then took our infant son, and then moved across the country, and then just cut me off. Just decided I don't want to deal with this, and so just stop talking to me. So these were things that, that's not to say like woe is me, but I understand pain, and these were things that brought me to the depths I had never been before. Even in my 20s, I had never experienced this kind of pain. But out of the pot of dirt grows the rose, right? That's if you hold a seed up to the light, nothing's gonna happen. It's when you plant that seed and it's surrounded in darkness and shit, fertilizer, it's close enough. That's when growth starts to occur, but it has to be surrounded in that darkness and a horrible atmosphere. And that's exactly what happened with me. And I had right after my ex left with our son, I trauma response. I moved up to Sedona. I'm sure you all are very familiar with Sedona. It's quite the spiritual mecca, and that was truly my cocooning period. Sedona was my cocoon, and I just went through a process there, and that's where the idea for the book came in, and kind of the focus, new vision for my life. I went up there, and I got up to Bell Rock, which is kind of the famous vortex up there, and I just kind of looked up and was like, life is really not going so well right now. And I need some vision, and I need a focus, and I need to know what to do, and I need you to help me. And so uh it collectively got together and started conspiring and helping me and gave me this vision for the book and this new process of helping trauma. And I know it works because I've used it on myself. It's a very meta book. It kind of I was like writing and healing as I was writing, so and and making it happen as I'm writing it and experiencing this healing. Trauma it clouds our brains, and like we have people running around with, my estimation is the majority of America with unhealed trauma that sits in our frontal lobe and just affects all. That's what makes us a human, our frontal lobe, and that's where trauma sits. Our judgment, our impulse control, our personality, all these things are controlled in our frontal lobe, and that's where the trauma sits. So being able to clear that up and coming up with a map to do that and to experience what I experienced with I'm sure we'll get into that with source energy and this awakening, truly awakening moment where I was turned off airplane mode as that's what I call it in my book, is we're all in airplane mode, and this was a moment of you're off airplane mode now. So that's what it brought me to. But that's kind of the inspiration where it came from, certainly. So yeah, a little long-winded, but that's yeah, that's where it came from. That was the background.
Great. So now, when you were writing the book, I know you had your background to pull from, but what really inspired you to bring this information forward and especially bringing it forward in the way that you have?
Well, it was a moment that I had of pure blissful awakening. I call this my bliss attack, or my near life experience, because it wasn't something where I never died. But it was this moment where I was working on the things that I kind of write on in the book, and doing a lot of shadow work and letting go of some old beliefs. It's quite paradoxical. Religion is the one thing that can stand in the way of a true religious experience. It's fascinating. But I was doing these things, and I had this moment of just pure awakening, and I realized that there is source energy. Explaining that to someone is a bit like explaining water to a fish. So if you think about like how would you explain water to a fish? Well, it's surrounds you, you breathe it, you get around because of it. You wouldn't be alive without it. And that's essentially what source energy is. It's this field that is around us at all times, and we're not aware of it. It's got hundreds of names in every religion. Even science has a name for it, dark matter. And so it was this moment that I realized I was in airplane mode and I'd been taken off airplane. So the phone, obviously in airplane mode, is perpetually in airplane mode, is not living up to its potential. You're not getting any signals or calls. You can't make texts or anything. So once I was taken off of this and shown this kind of blissful awakening moment where I was having this love attack for 3 hours, and it was the best, drug free, no drugs. That's why I'm so excited about this, is there was no drugs. I need to be shown that this is a drug free possibility. um and it just was, I just kind of came out of that realizing that, much like a fish. That's kind of used the fish analogy before. I realized I'd been like a fish in a pond my whole life, and then all of a sudden, a fisherman comes and dips his line in and takes a fish out of that pond, and like, what is this? Like, it's not only is there multiple ponds, there's ocean, there's land, like what is this? I've been in this pond my entire life. Um, and so that's really was what I was like, okay, I want everyone to experience this, and I need to come up with a map to show people how to experience this, and that's really where it came from.
Okay. So now, in the information that you had sent to me, you described the book as a structure that's like a progressive system that you can
Mhm.
kind of hold on to these rungs, I guess. It's a 13 rung system. And I was wondering if you could really explain that to us, maybe a little bit about what each one of them was and what somebody can hope to achieve at the very end.
Yeah, so yeah, I was so when I've had this experience, and like it took a while for me to kind of come around. And when you've been in, it's like when you've been in a movie theater for too long and you come out to the light, your eyes need a light, like you need to adjust. So it was that kind of awakening that was like, all right, I need to adjust. So, but when the book kind of came to me and, like, envisioning, a world of sorcerers and, it's with you using source energy. And like you had said, it's not about casting spells or anything. You can leave your hooded robes and like magic wands in the closet for now. Little Harry Potter glasses. There's no cauldrons or Eye of Newt needed for this sorcery. But it kind of came to me in this form that, I'd been to AA for a while and I saw something that's like, okay, 12 steps, and like I needed to form it. So instead of steps, moving forward is good, but moving up is better because a bird has a better perspective on things than the worm. So I chose the rungs and then 13 for a very specific reason because 13 in tarot is represents death, rebirth, and transformation, and also is associated with the divine and is said to bring good luck to people. But everyone here in America, it's such bad luck that hotels don't even have 13th floors. Like it's so strange and so crazy. And I kind of looked into the background, something about the Last Supper, and there were 13 people at the Last Supper, and Judas was the 13th person. So it's all just hogwash. It's all hogwash. And so 13 is a very lucky number, but part of the whole deal of sorcery is starting to question things that you may have truths that you held that may not actually be true. And that is the first step, the shadow work. And so there's 13 of them. There's shadow work, a call for inaction, surrender to serenity, health is wealth, emotional alchemy, comfort in discomfort, attention to intention, um, follow your bliss, goats over sheep, rose-colored contacts, instinct versus intuition, the chakra life, and assist leader. Yeah. Oh yeah, got those. So yeah, and they're not in a strict order. So the whole thing with AA was like these this rigid, you do one step, you do two steps. It's not like that. They're very fluid, and you can move in between them, and they're all of equal importance, and also subjective in their importance because maybe some rungs of those come to you easier. Maybe someone's better at, like treating the body well and health. Maybe that is already natural, and you need to focus more on, comfort and discomfort or emotional alchemy or something. So like the importance is going to be subjective to anyone. And if you're able to get them and work them to the best of your ability, that's, at the very end is what I hope for everyone is this these bliss attacks. And I still get them every once in a while. I'm not to the point where I can make them they just have to happen. That's the thing about meditation is like you can't go in expecting anything. You can't go in expecting something to happen, but you can't expect something not to happen either. So, and that's kind of when the magic happens during meditation, that's the second rung, a call for an action. Big part of sorcery is that meditation. But yeah, I don't know if you want me to go over all of them. I don't have time to go over all of them, or if you want me to go over
Well,
some of
yeah,
them, or
we can go over some of them because, I'm just wondering, so you're talking about first doing the shadow work and then that call for inaction and the surrender to serenity and health and wealth and all of those types of things. Do you find that you have to achieve or that it's best to achieve one level before you move up? So, like, you wouldn't necessarily jump into um, the attention to intention as the very first step, right?
well, yeah, I mean, it's so they're in an order that kind of just came to me naturally. And that's where it's important to kind of have the overview and read all of the audio too. I just finished the audiobook, which is great because there's a lot of humor in it, and I get to tell my own jokes, which is really fun. But they're in an order. For instance, and they came to me. Some things make sense that they're in an order,
Hmm.
because shadow work is so important, and meditation, a call for an action is so important. But the third one is called surrender to serenity, and that's about understanding human behavior better and how bad things happen, and there really is no such thing as a good or a bad person. They're just people just making choices every day, and they're just reflections of their own environment. And it's understanding human behavior that kind of is able to get you in a good state to understand emotional alchemy, which is that turning of base emotions into elevated emotions. And a lot of that is, forgiveness and letting go and knowing how people work and how they operate and things like that is it really helps with forgiveness and letting go. So, in some instances it makes sense why they're in an order, but I just don't consider them a strict, rigid order
Got it.
by any means. But doing that is able, like once you're able to understand humans better, that emotional alchemy comes a little bit easier, and that's a big one for me as well. Something I do quite a bit.
Great. So now, was there one goats over sheep or something like that? Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that?
yeah. That's one of my favorites that came in, and so. Goats as in and it's interesting because the animal fits it too, even goats is the acronym everyone uses now. It's very common for greatest of all time. And the mentality of anyone that's a goat is one of, they don't listen to the chatter of other people. They have their fit focus and vision, and who the actual greatest of all time is irrelevant. I don't want people thinking that, like getting an ego from that. But anyone who's any achiever in life has the mindset of a goat. And they just are locked in, and they don't listen to the chatter of others, and they know their vision, they know their focus. And anyone who's achieved anything has the mindset of a goat, and whoever the actual greatest of all time is completely irrelevant, and that's always, especially in sports, it's always in the viewer's perspective and the viewer's opinion. And like, is it, I'm a big sports fan, Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, that doesn't matter who the actual, it's pointless to even talk about. It's about having the mindset, and one of the biggest things about being a goat is to understand that we live in a world of sheep, and people are just kind of, there's so many people that just want to be told what to do and how to be, and they're fine with that, and they just kind of go through life, and that's okay, and they just want to be told what to do and listen to people. And sheep are just, they're kind of lost without the shepherd. They need outside guidance, and they want to be told what to do. And one of the biggest things in following, and they just kind of follow others and follow the other sheep. And a big part of being a goat is, 98% of the society at large will spend 98% of their free time on shit that doesn't matter. It's frivolous nonsense. So, following the masses can be problematic because a lot of time the M is silent. So it's really important to have the kind of mindset of a goat. And I like how the goat itself is even, like it's kind of an unhurtable, can eating, like does its own thing kind of animal, as well as being this acronym that works for it. So it's fascinating that those two go so close in line together. But you not all goats are sorcerers, because some of them kind of develop an ego, and you can get everything that you want and achieve everything, and if you do it in the wrong energy, you're going to achieve everything, and then it's going to feel hollow and empty. So, a sorcerer achieves everything and still maintains the joy when they get everything. Whereas, you can be a goat and kind of get all you want, and then, well, that's it. And now you're on to the next thing. So you can, not every goat is a sorcerer, but you can't be a sorcerer without the mindset of the goat. So that's where that whole chapter comes from, or wrong.
Yeah. So, earlier we were talking about if you want to call your awareness, your awakening, that kind of thing that happened. But was there one particular instance that really caused that monumental aha that changed everything? It sounds like you had a lot of things feeding into it, but
Mhm.
was there one pivotal moment that caused your big aha?
So well, I mean, there were two really, and one was in the treatment center that I was in when I was late 20s. And it was this faith-based treatment center, and everyone kind of, I was just so lost and so screwed up, and I just said, I need guidance, help me. And so they all kind of got in a circle and kind of prayed for me and did the whole, like Jesus come into his heart thing. And, I felt a shift. There was something that happened energetically in that moment that felt a shift. And and that can actually be kind of a dangerous time for people, in cults that will happen and this miracle healing and things, and they'll attribute it to the leader. So now you got to do everything what that leader says. Or that moment will be like, oh, it's the religion and it's the dogma. So now you got to listen to all the dogma of the religion, so they take advantage of these moments and try to lead you in without, this was an experience I know now that it was caused by my own belief in healing. I could have believed Batman was my savior and had this exact same thing happen. So that was a big moment. That was a big change. But then Christianity just got me screwed up even worse and made my anxiety worse. And so that was when I really started questioning things, when my mother started passing, and then when I started letting go of these beliefs I had been programmed with, these false beliefs in religion, that this is the only way, and like all this, heaven and you're going to hell, and all these this garbage, just garbage. Um, Once I started really questioning that, and letting go, then the second event happened, and that was this awakening moment that was unreal, and it was that the moment in the treatment center was this energetic shift, but this was the bliss attack. This was the 3 hours of just flowing love coming in, while at the same time, kind of downloads coming in to my consciousness, and telling me truths. And I knew they were truths because of how I felt. So those things two were going together. And it was like, I've never felt like this. And I've never, like, what is this? What is this? And, the field, and the unified field, the Akashic field, it's called a million things. And it was tuning into this field of energy where it was just that it is, everything that ever was and ever will be, all this information is located in this field. And it was in that moment that I realized I could tap into this field, for healing, thriving, and a whole new life. And it was tapping into that field that I was able to write this book. It was tapped in, and what it did was ancient wisdom that's been around since the beginning of time was now transferred through me into my fingers, through my subconscious, through my humor, through my experiences, all my movie knowledge and all that stuff, and came out. What made Jesus such an effective teacher was that he was able to use these parables. He knew about this, obviously knew about this field, and he was able to teach and tell people about it. And he used these very effective parables for the time. Unfortunately, they're 2,000 years old now, and you go to a 20-year-old and say, well, that's like putting new wine in old wineskins. That doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore. But I use that as kind of like, okay, I can use technology and pop culture to kind of use the parables that people will understand what this is. So those were my two big awakening moments. But the second one was the transformative one. And I've had bliss attacks every once in a while since then, and kind of had one in a treatment center, and just was showing me complete, was like, here's where you're gonna go, this is what you're gonna do. And yeah, they're fabulous. I love them.
So really, in a way, that kind of feeds into that surrender to serenity, that you talk about a little bit in the book, where you're letting everything go and you start to align to that flow, and then you just sort of, take off, moving in those higher directions. And so, as I'm hearing you talk, it sounds like a lot of your life experience has been translated, through the humor, through the words that you use, kind of as a mirror for people to be able to move through their own stuff.
hmm Yeah, and that's why I use the humor, like trauma healing. It needs to be serious sometimes, but it certainly doesn't need to be serious all the time. And having a light attitude about it just is able to, bring people in, and there's just a sense of comfort I get from laughing. And there's just times when I just really get light humor with it. And the whole thing, I tried to engineer it for the shattered generation TikTok, the shattered concentration. So I kind of, it's laugh, think, feel. I kept those three things in mind throughout the entire process of the book. So the whole thing was like I need to be either be making them laugh, think, or feel. So I keep them I keep them engaged and not that's why I got it on audio too. I don't know how many people read anymore, especially the younger generation. So I felt it was really important to, laugh, think, feel, and have that whole cycle and just kind of repeat that throughout the entire book. And people will only people only believe, accept, and surrender sometimes to the energy they're currently in, which makes a heated argument so damaging because someone that's in a heated argument, they don't want to hear about kindness and like laughter, and they want you to throw more anger at them so they can justify the way they're feeling and then make it intensify the high. The anger is a very unpleasant high, but it's a very charging high. So, if when you're in that kind of mood, and that's why I want to make sure people were in a light mood to be able to heal, because they need to be in that mood. No one can heal in a state of fear. It just doesn't work that way in a state of fear, anger, or, that's so even things in my background, when I kind of tell my background a little bit, I keep it really light and funny. And it could have been dark and, like, keep people on the edge of their seat, kind of fear, but instead I made sure that it was light and funny and to make sure that people are in the right energy to heal, because that's the whole point of the book is to heal and then thrive.
Right. So when you talk about like rose-colored contacts, that is also more about helping people to move in those positive directions.
Yeah, it's
To see.
perspective. I mean, the world around us happens through us, not to us. So,
Mhm.
people, that is all about perspective and how you're seeing things. And, the whole road colored, that's an old saying, see the world through road colored glasses. Said contacts to bring in, make it a little different, bring it into something, more 21st century. But yeah, it is about perspective and, the events that happen. And you can really, it's never, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we kind of respond, react to it. So if you have a good attitude about things and a certain perspective on how things are, and a lot of gratitude, and the things that we go through can be, I don't believe in that whole, everything happens for a reason. I think that's kind of some toxic positivity bullshit. But, like I do believe that, when we hold ourselves separate from the guidance of source and our intuition, and I talk about intuition training a lot in there too, but it's when we hold ourselves separate, there is a lot of meaning that can come from these things, and to look for that meaning and to understand that, just because we went off of the guided route, Source will recalculate the route just like on Google Maps and recalculate it. It's like, all right, well, you drifted off here, but that's okay. We're gonna recalculate this and get you back around. But that's the whole point of the intuition training, so you don't get off the map. Intuition training is so that you don't take a wrong turn, but you're always going to get recalculated. But that's you don't have to go through that. So that's its perspective.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of really helpful tips for people to kind of start at point A and go to point B or point Z, if you will. Are you going to develop this into a course or any type of workshops for people?
Yeah, I'd love to, and they'd be a lot of fun too. Certainly that's kind of the goal. I was this whole download vision, the book's only been out a couple months, but the whole was just like this is the seed that plants the career tree. And I would love to be able to, this is certainly what I'm supposed to be doing. So I would love to do like courses and things like that. And I'd love to go on like tours. I'd call myself a mystical comedian because I want to be able to like meld the meditation and the kind of do stand-up philosophy, almost meld meditation with some of the philosophy and some of the humor. Like I don't want to just get up there. I'm a former stand-up comedian, and that didn't work out. And so, but now I get why I was given this gift, because now I can work that in and to make people laugh, think, and feel. So I'd love to be able to do that, and for sure, the whole webinar thing and walk people through it. And the book is a book. I'd thought about making a workbook, but it was already too, I didn't want it to be get too big. And there was already enough information in there. So that could be something to do, as well as I have an idea for 102, Sorcery 102 down at some point too. So I've definitely got plans, and I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I have no idea. I'm just kind of following the guide and seeing where where it leads me.
Okay, well, great. All right, so I'm intrigued. I want you to share, if you would, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but a little bit of the humor that you're throwing in the book.
Yes, well, a lot of it I tell this amazing story. I was in rehab one time with the rapper DMX for about 2 days, and so I kind of begin the book with this story. He's since passed on, but I purposely make it really funny. And because it was quite this surreal moment. He's a very, very famous rapper and someone I had idolized as growing up, and he was not in a good place in his life, obviously, and he had a lot of struggles. So this whole story that I begin the book with is I make it really comical. I'm constantly keeping up jokes in the whole thing. Like it's I can't think of one like offhand, but I do like little bits here and there that I had written for like my comedy sketches, and I found places to add them in to add a little humor into the places. So it was really cool that it kind of came full circle like that because I had these bits and routines that I had written out a long time ago, and I haven't done stand up in quite a long time because when I got sober, I realized that it wasn't the life for me. It was a negative. It's just, I mean, it's a fun atmosphere, but there's always drinking. It's always real late night. It's a tough life, and it just was not a healthy atmosphere. So that's when I just said, I don't want to do that. I just, as much as I like making people laugh, the life of a comedian just sucked. So, but I had all this material, and I was able to, work all these jokes that I had written for my stand up into the book. So that's where things get really, really, really fun and just keeping it light. That's the whole got to keep it light.
Great, great. Now, we've talked a lot about the content of the book, and you've kind of woven some of your life stories in there. But for somebody who's listening, maybe somebody who hasn't, purchased the book or read the book, do you have some tips on where to get started, how to make it real, how to kind of move through that pain that they're experiencing initially, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual pain?
Oh yeah. Well, the best place to start. So here in America, right? We have everything is the focus, and you kind of went over it a little bit when you introduced me. Was that the focus is on the symptoms. Everything is about symptoms. So if you have depression, you go see a therapist. If you have anxiety, you need to go see a psychiatrist, get some pills. If you have alcohol issues, you go to AA meetings. But if you have drug issues, don't go to the alcohol meetings. Go to the drug meetings. If gambling, those are different meetings. Like if you want to talk about your soul or spirit, you need to go to church. It's everything is separate. And there's this focus on symptom, symptom, symptom. And the Western medicine kind of approach to things is, if there were a lunch once a month and 100 people attended this lunch and 90 people got violently ill each time, the Western medicine approach would be to dole out anti-nausea pills to all 90 of those people once a month, as opposed to looking at the core issue, which is the quality of the food. Um, so, and that's not to say anything is wrong with I mean, there is some stuff wrong with the medical community, but it's good and bad. I mean, the sorcerer understands that the world is a world of gray. There is no this or that. It's, our mind wants to put things in boxes, and that's just not how life works. If you have anything in terms of acute injuries, the medical community knows exactly what to do with those. Go see a doctor. If I fall and I break my arm and the bone is sticking out, don't send me to a chiropractor. That's not it's not going to work. Yeah. But once you go and the doctor sets the bone and does the surgery and stitches you up, uh, it is the body that heals the body. So, what made the body heals the body. So the doctor's part is done at that point. Now it's up to the body to heal itself. And the whole thing with trauma that people don't understand is that you have to set the emotional bone. You have to set the spiritual and emotional bone. And people don't know how to do that. Nobody, and especially the medical community, they have not a clue. Anything that is labeled chronic, they don't have a clue because they have mind, body, spirit. And it is those three things. They just recently started saying, oh, maybe the mind and body are connected. Now, and that's like within the last 10 or 20 years. So that is really recent that they've said, okay, these two things might be connected, but there is no spirit. That is not, and don't expect that to be added anytime soon. But there is no healing chronic condition without the triangle. And so once you kind of understand how to set the emotional bone and for things like that, humans can't heal while numb. And my thing was certainly with drugs and alcohol and all these things that are pain duckers. And it can be anything, it's just gambling, shopping, food, sex, drugs, alcohol, all these pain duckers. And the first place to start is to kind of identify your pain duckers and understand that there is happiness and there's joy. And if you're chasing happiness, which is all those things I mentioned, those are all things that make us happy. And there's nothing wrong with those things. It is the attachment to those things that causes all the issues. So the first step is to identify your pain duckers, and they're different for everybody. It could be isolation. The phone, a big one. The phone is a huge one. I see people in the gym who they can't even get through a full set of weights at the gym. It's like they're doing leg extensions and then they stop to rest in between and they get on their phones. And it's just, these are no one can just sit and just be. And that's a problem. That is people who aren't there, and whatever is happening to make them not okay is going to continue because what you resist persists and you have to feel it to feel it. Feel it to heal it. So that's the biggest starting point. And my thing is to go, I identified all my things, and my commitment was a year, was that I abstained from, I was in a point where I was not in a relationship or anything, and two caterpillars can't climb into the cocoon. So if you're single right now, this is a great time to start healing. So I just made a commitment that I wasn't going to date or I was going to abstain from sex. That was one of my pain duckers. I was going to, no drugs, no alcohol. Um, I was going to limit my phone use. I understand, people can't. There's some good advice in there about, having a healthier relationship with our phones. I understand you can't just turn it off, but you can do a lot less with it. And it's uncomfortable. Let me tell you, it's when you cross the river of change, there is a strong undercurrent of discomfort that is inevitable. Inevitable. And but again, it is you have to set the bone. It's going in for surgery and that doctor setting the bone is not a pleasant experience. It's uncomfortable. But if you don't do it, it's not going to heal. You might even die from that kind of injury. So, but it will not heal right, and you'll never lose your arm. I mean, it's a discomfort you have to go through, and this is a little bit different because it lasts longer. But a year without pain ducking, and that doesn't mean like go forever without these things. For me, I'm done with drugs and alcohol. I don't have any. I don't wish to do them ever again. For me, I'm set with. I don't think that's an area I ever want to go again, and because I'm much happier without it. But things like relationships and things, and there you can kind of come back around to these things. But I committed to a year to really set the bone and heal, and that's and it worked. It worked. I crossed the river of change. I got through that extreme thing of that undercurrent of discomfort, and boy, it was heavy, and for quite a while. But it does not last. And once this whole frontal lobe clears up, let me tell you, things get really exciting, and my brain just functions so much better now. Like, I wrote a book. I'm like a C+ student. I just recently figured out how to spell business. Like I'm not, I'm not anything unique, right? Like I'm not, but because I've cleared this up and I'm able to like think, it's life just completely changes. But that's definitely, I would say, the starting point. And the book too, like, it's on Amazon. But even if people, I just want to get this out there. So like if you want to email me, I have free e-codes of the book and stuff. I don't mind like giving people free e-codes for the book if they can't afford to buy one. It's because I just want to see people get better. But that's the starting point. Find your, it is joy over happiness. Happiness chasers. Joy is that internal peace that's anchored to hope, and it is something you can't be happy all the time, but you can be constantly filled with joy, and that's the goal. And you'll know if you're a happiness chaser because you'll either be doing your happiness chasing things or you'll be thinking about when you're going to do them again. That's not a joy, but the joy is the goal. Peace.
Yeah, great. So now for people who are listening to us on audio formats, do you want to go ahead and speak those codes so that people might be able to reach out to you if they can't go to Amazon and purchase the book?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's a whole list of like codes I have to send people, but I have, like my email is you can find me on I've been off social media for 4 years now, and I'm just now getting back on like in the past couple weeks, which is something new for me. But I only have Instagram right now, but I'm sorcerer with a U _13. You can reach me on there. And if you follow me, I'll follow you right back. Because if you're watching this, you're good people, and I want to follow you too. But watching or listening. But I also have my email, which is sorcerer13 at Gmail, and I can send you codes if you want for the free book. So either Instagram or email me, and I'll say there's like an instruction sheet that it came with and stuff. But I have, have like 450 of them, so I don't mind giving them out at all. And then yeah, the book is on Amazon, but and I've got the audiobook too. So that's a lot of people don't, and I understand a lot of people don't have time to read as much anymore. So that's why I'm excited about the audiobook because I listen to more books than I read. So that'll be out probably soon, next month or so.
Well, awesome. Awesome. So, okay, let's pretend like you're on this platform and the entire world is your audience. What are a couple things that you would want to share with them to
Hmm.
really hone in?
Yeah. So, well, one thing I like to say to people is, the world may be against you, but the universe is for you, and that's all that matters. That's one thing I love telling people. Another thing is the journey is the destiny. So just keep that in mind. There is no, there that's better than here. When you get to your there, when you're there becomes a here, find another there. It's so the journey is the destiny. And another thing is I like to tell is just don't stop before the miracle happens, which is the miracle happens when you have programmed yourself with the mindset of happiness and success to where you don't have to force it anymore. So in the very beginning with me, I did meditations and I was, mind heart coherence is lining up your mind and your heart, and you're creating a clear vision with an elevated emotion. And when that happens, now you've created a beacon to the universe. And so you're starting to feel what it's like to be this healed, thriving person. And so you start acting like it because you're feeling like it. They always say act as if, but if you feel as if, no acting is necessary. But your beacon is also sending out to the universe, which needs to conspire and do its thing. So, and once, you're here and the universe is here, and then once these two worlds meet up, now your dreams are a reality and the miracle has happened. Now you're ingrained with the person you want to be. So it is about, and that's what it's a manifestation, right? It is a station you tune into. And that's how to tune into it. I get into that with the mind heart coherence and creating that vision, whatever, if it's healed you, if it's you with a new career or a new relationship, that's a million things you can take this, and it's about creating that. And once you create it and you're feeling it, there's no acting that's required. Now the miracles happen. Now you're ingrained and you are now programmed for greatness. And there's three things we're programmed here for sure in America. There's failure, there's mediocrity, and there's greatness. But you can reprogram yourself, and you know which one. You know which one you're programmed for. You can tell yourself right now, and your intuition will tell you. And but you can reprogram it at any point. And mediocrity is actually the hardest one to get out of because it's kind of like, things are okay. It's not, and that's the toughest one to get out of. Failure, it's like I gotta change, but mediocrity is really hard to get out of. But yeah, don't stop before the miracle happens. That's a big one.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I've thoroughly enjoyed your sharing all this great information. So, everyone, you've been listening to Justin Shaw. Check out his book, Sorcery 101, 13 Rungs to Higher Elevation of Consciousness. I was getting ready to say evolution of
Yeah.
consciousness because
Elevation, yeah.
yeah, it's
I
elevation
mean,
of
evolution, that would
consciousness.
work too.
The
Yeah.
evolution really feels like that's kind of what you're talking about too, this evolution
I'm not
of
opposed to
the
that. Yeah.
progression of, yeah, becoming more conscious. So again, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. You want to show the book one more time, Sorcery
Sure.
101,
Yeah,
13
it's on
the
it's on
higher.
Amazon, and wherever books are sold. I'd search by my name, Justin L. Shaw, because I misspell sorcery. They like to auto-correct it, and then they'll send you to a book that's apparently about becoming a better wizard. So, I mean, that sounds interesting too. You can go that route, and I they look at it, but yeah, it's not my book. So, I would go with Justin L. Shaw and search that way.
Beautiful, great. Thank you so much. And Justin, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. So until we're all back together again next time, namaste and much love, everyone. Thanks again and have a great evening.
All
Bye
right.
bye.